Mass sightings are cases on steroids where we don't just have one or two individuals. We may have dozens, if not hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people encountering something in the same time frame.
Will the public get out of control here? And will this devolve into genuine fear?
One of the biggest sightings in UFO history happened here in the desert state of Arizona. But what hundreds of people saw was no mirage.
This was something phenomenal. No doubt in my mind, it changed a lot of lives.
Over the years, Arizona's otherworldly landscape has been a backdrop for bizarre, unwanted, even supernatural encounters.
There's a lot of claims that out in sort of the wilderness around Phoenix, you have odd stories of people encountering strange anomalies, allegations of interdimensional portals, monsters, various cryptids.
In March 1997, one of the most terrifying encounters yet stops the bustling city of Phoenix dead in its tracks. It was an incredible UFO event that would become known as the Phoenix Lights.
I got 4 of them. Major sighting here.
There aren't many heroes in this story, but there are a few, and one of them is named Francis Barwood.
Francis was a member of the Phoenix City Council at the time, and the only one willing to get to the bottom of what really happened that night.
The phone lit up. It was about 10 miles away.
It was moving from the southeast to the west-northwest.
Traveling approximately 1,000 miles per hour.
Just an outline that was rather almost translucent, as if there wasn't as much reflection coming off.
I talked to over 700 people, and all those people described exactly the same thing. And they said this thing was humongous. It was something bigger than a football field. They said it was triangular shaped. They all said it had like gaseous lights in it. And they said that it was totally silent, a dull gray, and it just moved slow. How can you get that many people to describe the same thing? They went to the sheriff, they went to the mayor, they went to all the other council members, and nobody would talk to them. Here's this mystery that went over Arizona and Phoenix, and I figured I'll get an answer.
Francis Barwood asks City Council to launch a formal investigation into the Phoenix Lights incident. But at the time, the topic of UFOs is a hushed secret.
After the meeting, one of the city managers came over to me and he said, "You shouldn't have asked that question." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because the mayor told everybody not to talk about it."
Pressure was on her not to pursue this. And this is not the only time that this type of thing's ever happened. You're gonna open a door and you may not know how to close that door. And you may not be able to answer the questions that you open up.
Francis isn't the first to encounter a UFO sighting kept under wraps. This has been happening for decades around the country.
New Mexico is certainly, I think, a special place in the history of UFO lore and also in the history of government secrecy.
One of the earliest mass sightings on record, now known as the Farmington Armada, reveals these shocking truths.
Hundreds and hundreds of people saw hundreds of UFOs over their town and in the general vicinity.
These were spherical or oval-shaped objects that were intelligently maneuvering across the sky. It had to be one heck of a show for the people on the ground.
There are a lot of sightings by individuals with fairly good perception of lights moving in the sky, objects seen during the day that didn't seem to be balloons and stars and aircraft, seemed to be something else. These sightings really weren't investigated.
There was that concern that the public might react with mass hysteria if they even thought that extraterrestrials were real.
Nearly 5 decades later, Frances Barwood finds history repeating itself with the Phoenix Lights sighting.
Why don't they want to know what this was that went over Arizona and over Phoenix?
No. They're lined up in a pattern, man. There's geometry behind this.
I think there's a lot of fear, so I think there's then this desire to ignore it altogether.
But for those who saw the chilling event, the haunting memories are impossible to ignore. Among them is the Lee family, who shared their story on the local news.
You just didn't know what to do. You know, it was just like, my God, how big is this thing?
It was a giant V, all right? And the right side of the V went over us. The left side was like a couple blocks over it.
I can't imagine what it must have been like to be in Phoenix on that day and having these things hover right above you for a long time.
Footage of the mysterious Phoenix Lights finally surfaces, validating hundreds of terrifying truths that Frances has been hearing from eyewitnesses.
Whoa, look at them all!
I got that one on video.
There's 4 of them. Look at there's 3 of them all together.
I was watching these videos and I called my husband. I said, you need to see this.
No, over here there's 4. Holy. Oh, you got 4? No.
That was a rude awakening. Something happened. It was not ours. I want to know whose it is. And I think everybody else that has seen it or heard of it, they all want to know too.
The massive object didn't look or behave like anything from our planet.
We're not hearing the sounds of any propulsion. There was nothing. There was absolute silence, which is unnerving.
I think people must have felt like they were in an otherworldly experience altogether. Everybody must have been affected very deeply by the experience.
And what you have there is a massive string of lights, maybe a mile, over the city of Phoenix at night. Stationary, solid, not moving. It's like, what could this be?
With so many witnesses, there's only 2 possibilities. Either what was seen was truly unexplainable, or it has an explanation because we know something was there. They're not crazy.
The Air Force came out and said that they were running exercises and operations, and that's what people saw after the incident.
That particular night, they flew 8 A-10s out of Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, taking off about 8:30 at night.
To me, that's just the most lame attempt to explain it away. It's like, you know, the military baked it, the press served it, and the public ate it.
Haunted by the voices of more than 700 witnesses, training flares are not an explanation Frances Barwood is ready to stomach.
It's still puzzling to me because why did everybody act like sheep? And, you know, it's okay, we won't talk about it, you know, so they didn't. It's like, why?
Then one evening, Frances receives a mysterious call that changes the course of her investigation. The voice on the line belongs to an eyewitness named Richard Curtis.
He was a retired veteran. He didn't know who else to call. He said he didn't want to call the government. And he says, I took detailed videos of it and I have them. He wanted me to know that he had these really good videos that showed the entire shape of everything. Up till then, there were some pictures of objects and you could see kind of lights and everything, but you couldn't see the detail. And he had gotten the detail. He said you can see the shape. You can see how big it was in comparison to the surrounding buildings and everything. He described that the lights were like gaseous. He was so excited about that he had gotten all this on video.
What's on those tapes could be life-changing for Barwood and those she is seeking answers for.
And I said, can you get the copy to my office? And he said he would.
Days go by with no sign of the tapes.
I thought, oh, he probably made this up. He didn't have video, didn't, you know, all this stuff. A week later, he called me up again at home. And he said, what did I think of these videos? And I said, I did not get them.
Richard Curtis tells Frances that 2 men from her office had already paid him a visit, dressed head to toe in black.
They came in, they asked where Richard Curtis's room was. They told him, they went up. He said they looked similar to each other. They were in 3-piece black suits. That was odd, being that it was like 110 or something like that out. He said to them, are you from Barwood's office? And they said, yes. They said, did you make the copies? And he said, no, I haven't had a chance. He goes, we'll make the copies. So they took them. And so he gave them the videos and thinking they were going to bring them to my office. I don't have guys in my office. I have all women. I have no idea who these 2 guys were. It sounds so, like, bizarre. Nothing made sense to me.
Who were these mysterious men? And why are those tapes so important to them?
There are so many stories around the world about odd-looking people, sometimes very pale, dressed in black suits, black hats, who either take evidence or show up at a witness's door, make them feel uneasy, tell them to be quiet, intimidate them.
On the basis of what happened with Richard Curtis and Frances Barwood, you could say this is a Men in Black encounter. I mean, absolutely. What the Men in Black represent is a whole other question that is a harder one to answer. Are they human? Are they not human? Are they part of a secret government agency?
Some ufologists have said these were aliens trying to stop my quest, but others have speculated that no, it was actually members of the government trying to control the narrative of what was going on in the skies.
One thing is for sure. The Men in Black did not want those tapes to reach Barwood's desk. If what Richard filmed really does reveal that extraterrestrial beings are behind the Phoenix lights, what does that mean for us?
The only thing I could think of is they're more advanced than we are. They're smarter than we are. Maybe our government and military are afraid of losing power and control.
With the tapes gone, Frances and the hundreds of eyewitnesses relying on her are no closer to getting answers.
Why isn't everybody saying, we need to know what this is?
Frances continues to look for answers.